Well, maybe just a short one. This will be part 4 of my reading of Storm Story by Tim Holmes and various sundries, a cautionary tale. And I'm continuing on with the eulogies of Charles Quincy Terrell of Massachusetts. Uh, and this comes from the Congressional Record. Address of Mr. McCall of Massachusetts. Mr. Speaker, I should speak today with very great reluctance if I did not feel that the imperfection and inadequacy of any tribute that I may pay to my colleague were not so well supplemented by the eloquent words which have been spoken by the gentlemen who have preceded me. What I shall say will be only the unstudied word that one friend speaks of another. I knew Mr. Terrell many years before he came to Congress. I knew him very well, his habits of patient industry, of careful preparation in any matter of which he had charge, and I knew his high talent as a lawyer. My colleague, Mr. Washburn, has spoken of a very good definition of genius, that it is the quality of taking infinite pains. Mr. Terrell certainly had that quality in a very high degree. He was one of the trustees of an important savings bank in Massachusetts, a position that could have no pecuniary attraction for anyone, but which required especially a talent for business and a devotion to the interests entrusted to him, a painstaking care for many details, and a willingness to look after the small savings of working people. He was willing to do such things as that, requiring his own gratuitous devotion to the good of others. He had the spirit of service. When he came to the House of Representatives, he served with great ability and labor upon one of the most undesirable committees of this House, as committees go, the Committee on Claims. I was impressed with the careful way in which he would study the merits, the dry details of the claims that were referred to him, and how judicial and thoughtful his decision would finally be. I know especially of one claim which had been pending for many years, a very just claim, which he unraveled, the merits of which he disclosed, and which was finally passed by both houses of Congress. His notable service here was rendered upon the Committee of the Judiciary, where he exerted an important and beneficent influence upon the character of our laws. He was always a man of delicate health, and especially so while he was a member of this House. It is remarkable that under such circumstances he should have been able to accomplish so much. Some of his speeches made here were models of argument upon the questions he discussed. He was a man who stood well with both sides of the House. While he was a strong Republican, he had none of the qualities of a narrow partisan. I remember in one of his campaigns, on account of some division among his antagonists, no nomination was made, and he received the vote of the great mass of the voters of his district without distinction of party. He was a man for whom a political antagonist under such circumstances might easily vote. He had a charming personality, and the personal quality that I think of more than any other was his gaiety of spirit. He was always good-natured. He always appeared to be unruffled, even when the jest concerned himself. He took a great interest in sports. I believe the day before he died, he attended with his son an athletic contest. He kept up his interest in all the walks and departments of life. His passing was a great loss to the delegation. his industry, his patience, his ability, his fine companionship, we all appreciated. And it was with very deep sorrow that we all learned that he was no more, and that we should not again see him in this hall and in the charming circle of his home. Address of Mr. Hawley of Oregon. Mr. Speaker, on the tide of passing years, we meet countless multitudes of people as ships that pass in the night. We see a dim form and outline. We know nothing of their content or their characteristics as they drift from our vision, probably never to be thought of again. But among the multitudes that come and go, there occasionally crosses our course someone who attracts us, and finding characteristic qualities that are admirable, we draw closer to them as bound on a similar voyage and acquaint ourselves with the qualities that have attracted us to them. I knew the Honorable Charles Q. Terrell as a member of the Committee on Claims, a most exacting committee whose duties are difficult satisfactorily to perform. To that body of men who referred the bills introduced by the members of the House or by the other branch of this legislative body seeking to have justice done to individuals, communities, or to organizations, ex parte evidence is largely the kind of evidence submitted. It is the custom of the committee to seek such information and evidence as may be available anywhere or in the departments of government, but largely the evidence is ex parte. Ex parte is a legal term which means outside of the courtroom. To weigh the evidence submitted and inquire thoroughly into the proposition made, to do justice to all claimants who present their claims to the consideration of a great government is not an easy task. Mr. Terrell, the ranking member of the committee, chairman of one of its subcommittees, was painstaking and indefatigable in labor. Faithful in the committee room, thoroughly acquainted with every bill referred to his subcommittee, diligent and careful in the examination of all the papers submitted, he endeavored to do that which was right between the government and its citizens. Service on that committee is difficult in another way. People, claimants, confident of the justice of their claims, present themselves before it and appeal to the sympathies and to the tender-heartedness of the members. No one could ever have said that Mr. Terrell was without sympathy, and at heart he was one of the kindest men. But it became necessary several times for him to take a position contrary to some claimants' contention, a very painful thing for him to do, but with gentleness equal to that of a woman and with a justice as great as that of Solomon's, he explained to them the reason for his action. It takes a man of considerable strength of character and manly fiber to do the right thing at all times and in the right way. In the 4 years' service of Mr. Terrell on that committee, I cannot recall an untactful word, an unkind sentence, or any statement that left a sting. In thinking of him, I think of the advice that Polonius gave to Laertius. This is a quote. "Give thy thoughts no tongue, nor any unproportioned thought his act. Be thou familiar, but by no means vulgar. The friends thou hast, and their adoption tried, grapple them to thy soul with hoops of steel, but do not dull thy palm with entertainment. of each new-hatched, unfledged comrade. Beware of entrance to a quarrel, but being in, bear it, bear it that the opposed may beware of thee. Every Give every man thine ear, but few thy voice. Take each man's censure, but reserve thy judgment. This, this above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. In the death of this distinguished member from Massachusetts, the public has lost a faithful and effective soldier of the common good. If all of his acts were taken and written down, I think those who loved him most and knew him best would have little cause to grieve. So clean his life, so clear his purpose, so just his motives and his action. On this day, hallowed by the birth of the greatest American ever born under the flag, it may not be inappropriate to step aside for a minute and speak a word concerning American character. Worthy human character is everywhere the greatest purely human thing in the world. And when, quote, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which it inherit shall dissolve, and like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a rack behind, unquote. Worthy men and women shall shine in fadeless immortality. And Tim Holmes has drawn an image into this page of the record. I'm going to continue reading here in a moment, but I have to change something on my screen. In his Ethics of the Dust, Mr. Ruskin uses this illustration. Go near a manufacturing town. Take from the hillside and from the pathways a handful of the common earth. It will be composed of sand, of clay, of soot, and of water. A mass that mars and disfigures everything it touches. Separate these four elements, taking the clay first, give it a little training, a little development, a little opportunity, and it becomes the common brick from which we build houses. With a yet higher development, a little greater opportunity, it becomes the porcelain, and with still further development, it passes into the finer china, and on through subsequent stages of development, if it has opportunity and will submit to the tests, until finally becomes a sapphire, blue with heaven's arch, and symbol of truth and faith. The sand will make such glass as this, indicating the skylight, or common glass, or glass worth more than its own weight in gold. But in its highest form and with its greatest opportunity for development, it becomes the opal, lit with iridescent fires. The black soot, marring and soiling everything it touches, if given its full opportunity of development, becomes the white diamond, fit to adorn the brow of beauty or the hand of power. And so this marring and distasteful mass, taken from the hillside, if allowed to develop, becomes a diamond, an opal, a sapphire, set about a star of snow. America is the conflux of all the races. Each race has brought its several aptitudes to this country, and out of the opportunities here afforded, there have been developed from time to time men and women of such character, attainments, and services as to become the admiration of the world. down in the cabin on the hillside of the Alleghenies, and up in a place in Massachusetts, on their several days of birth, were born little handfuls of human clay. No one stood by those cradles to presage the development that would come. Out of adversity, out of seeming impossibilities, out of very opposition itself, Lincoln rose by the refinements that he submitted to, and from the developments that he sought, as did the elements of this. Uh, as did the elements of this handful of earth of which I have spoken, to be great Americans. The foremost men in all, the tide of time, and the man in whose solemn memory we hold this service today, by similar means, by purity of devotion and purity of heart and integrity of purpose, rose in your heart and in mine and in the hearts of his constituents, um, for for high and holy place, because he worth, he worthily did his work and faithfully availed himself of his opportunities. I'm sorry for the breaks in my reading, but as you see, uh, let's see here if I can make this clear. Maybe not. Yes, Tim has drawn a number of scenes into this book. As I say, it's a joint work of art, by various and sundry, and so sometimes the charcoal of Tim's charcoal is a little bit too dark, and I cannot read it, but I will go on. But he has concluded his work. We have missed him seriously in the committee of claims. We have lacked many times the soundness of his judgment and the sobriety of his reasoning. With his departure, the government and the people have suffered a distinct loss, but that which is our loss is the gain of some other world. Man, as it was said once before the halls of Congress, is the center of a circle whose fatal circumference he cannot pass. Within its confines, he is omnipotent, but outside it, he perishes. And if any human life, even the longest and most fortunate, is not supplemented hereafter by fuller life, then we are all creatures of the most miserable, and those who fear to die should dread to live. For life would be a tragedy more dark and inexplicable than death. Quote, what a piece of work is man! How noble in reason, how infinite in faculty, in form and moving, how express and admirable, in action, how like an angel, in apprehension, how like a god, the beauty of the world. Unquote. Such man as he, whose solemn memory we commemorate today, lead us in the words of the great singer to this, quote, there is a God who lives and loves, one God, one law, one element, and one far off divine event, to which the whole creation moves, unquote. Okay, I have to terminate this for today because I have another engagement at 3:00. But in any case, I've been reading from Storm Story, a cautionary tale by Tim Holmes and various and sundry others. And it is a collaborative work of art, uh, not only of lives lived, but uh, lives engaged in Tim's art, and eulogies written, and maybe a little bit in Skip's reading. So anyway, that was part 4. I will continue with part 5 another time. Thank you for joining me today. Yeah, Oleg, I'm sorry it's over already because I have another engagement, but we'll see you another time.